Hey, what's going on, BiggerPockets? This is Brandon Turner and my friend
Ryan Murdock.
What's up, Ryan Murdock?
Not too much, man. Early start. Good to
It
see
is
you
an
though.
early start, yeah. So we're talking today about the lessons we've learned in going big over the last, like 12 months now.
Yeah,
really?
12 months are really the past 5-6 months. Things have really been
cranking.
Yeah,
so we've learned a lot of stuff in this process. I get that question a lot. Is like, what's the biggest thing you've learned in scaling your business? Basically, a quick summary of what we've done. I think I have a slide here coming up for it. But basically, in the last 12 months, we bought a mobile home park. We're buying mobile home parks right now, not because it's the world's best thing in the world. I like them a lot, and I think they're great. But it was more important that we decided something than just like keep going, I'm not really sure what to buy. So we dove deep into mobile home parks. There's a good lesson for everyone. It's just dive deep into something that excites you. And we like them. And we can talk about a little bit more later why we like them. So don't concern yourself too much with it right now. But so we did that. We started just buying a bunch of them, building a real estate fund. We have a company called Open Door Capital. We raise money from accredited investors and we put them into mobile home parks. And it's been an adventure. So 128 lots in Fostoria, 40 in North Point.
Yeah, home crop 146, and we got another one that we're closing on in a few minutes.
Yeah, it should be like any minute now. We're closing another one,
177.
177.
600 lots, I think, by the end of the day.
Yeah,
or thereabouts.
Which is crazy. And that's on top of the one that Ryan and I did another deal a couple years ago. 2 years ago now. We bought a mobile home park together with 50
lots.
Roughly 50, yeah.
Yeah.
And so all that, like really in the past 12 months, I would even say in the last 8 months, I've both of us have like 10x'd our portfolio size almost, or at least like 6x'd our portfolio size. So today is all about what the things that we've learned in that process. So we're just going to go through 15 little lessons, talk about each one for a minute or so, and then get y'all on your day. So with that said, if you're watching this video, could you guys do me a quick favor? If you enjoy the stuff we're talking about today, don't forget to give that thumbs up below the video. It just lets the internet know that this is a good video, and then the internet shows it to more people. That's kind of how the internet works. So number one, create a compelling vision, not based on what is perfect, but what sounds amazing. Now, the reason I bring this up is because this idea of so many people are wandering around looking for what should they do? What's their purpose? What are they supposed to do? And what I learned is that if you do that, you'll never do anything. If you're on a beach looking for like hidden gold, like you got to look all day. But here's the truth is we can create our own gold and bury it wherever we want. And so don't think of it as much as you're on a beach with a metal detector, but you're at a canvas and you can do whatever you want. So we just created a vision of like what would be cool. And there's a book called The Vivid Vision by Cameron Harrow that helped a lot with that kind of visioning. In fact, it's over there behind Ryan. I'm not sure if it's picking up on the camera or not, but just on kind of the vision. What would sound amazing? What would be an amazing life? What would be an amazing company, an amazing team to be able to put this together?
Yeah, pretty much the most amazing job description I ever read.
Good.
It's the best help wanted ad ever. I read that and I'm like, yeah, sign me up, man.
Yeah, sign me up.
Please, how do I get on board?
Yeah, so this has been it's been an adventure, and what's cool about that is how much faster. I mean, our goal was to own 1,000 pads by the end of 2021. That was what the vision said, and I'm confident we're gonna actually hit that this year by the end of 2020 instead of 21. So a whole year ahead of time, because when you line up a great vision, like a clear vision with a great team, amazing things happen. And so create a compelling vision. And again, not something that you should do, but what sounds amazing. Cool. Anyone want to add that one?
Nope. Keep going.
All right, you want to take this one?
Yeah, don't be afraid of commas. This is a quote from our good friend Darren Sagerg, and it's so simple but so perfect that don't be afraid of commas. So regardless of the size of the deal, the challenges and the rewards are pretty much the same. Yeah. So don't let the size of the deal scare you. Yeah,
and we'll talk a little about risk a little bit later on, but this idea of buying 100 unit for $3 million is not that much different than buying a 20 unit for $1 million.
No, essentially the same amount of work, but so we'd go after bigger deals over smaller ones all day. Now that we've kind of gotten past that fear or that hesitation of those big numbers and those commas, they're really not that scary.
Yeah, it really is. It's a number on a page, and that's what's fun about scaling your real estate business. So, number 3, find ways to define and simplify your criteria. So in the beginning, when we were looking at getting, scaling our business, we were like, we'll look at everything. We'll look at, first it was like apartments and mobile homes and mobile home parks. And like A-class and C-class. We'd do everything. Yeah. And more, we got more and more simple in terms of like, what do we actually want? So today it's very simple. Like we've really narrowed down 100 pads or greater. We know that we want that. Why? Because it's the same amount of work to buy a 50 unit. Yeah. as 100 units. So we're like, all right, we'll go 100 or more. We want city, sewer, and water within our parks just because it reduces risk. Now, it does not mean you can't make money on a not city, sewer, and water. No, that's what we've chose. We just want to get really clear in our criteria. And, population size, it matters. It has to be a large population, and we have specific numbers for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that made a huge difference, just defining our focus. We were way too scattered before, even within just the mobile home park niche. There were so many parks that we were looking at early on that we really had no business even looking at because we knew we weren't going to buy them. They weren't a good fit, but it took a couple months to get our focus narrowed down. And once we did that, we just got so much more efficient with our time in underwriting and evaluating these deals because we knew specifically what we wanted at that point. We were able to just discard all the noise around it.
Yeah, this applies to even like newbies, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If you're brand new, you're looking for a duplex. You look for the duplex.
Yeah, you got to define your focus. You can't look at and do everything. So you've got to pick something and go with it. And like you say, it may not be like the best thing, but like pick what you want to go after and focus just on that.
Yeah, and the cool benefit of this is a couple of things that we've found is one, when we really, really define what we wanted we can get really good at that. So the first thing is we can become experts. Like our goal is to become the #1 best mobile home park investment company in the country when it has to do with 100-unit parks that are city, sewer, and water, that are tenant-owned properties that need infill. Like when I say tenant-owned, it means the tenants own their own houses. We just own the land. So when it comes to very narrow niche, we want to be the #1 best company on the planet for that thing. You might be trying to buy a duplex, trying to buy a fourplex, a 20-unit, whatever. How do you become the #1 best person in your market on that thing? By focusing and by narrowing what you want. And then you can really dive deep. And the second thing that comes in really handy with that is now you can communicate to other people that you're that person. You're the person that buys that thing. Yeah. And so whether it's an apartment or whether it's a small deal, it just comes in really handy.
Yeah, as soon as people hear about that thing, you want your name synonymous with whatever that is. Like, 4 units. That's my buddy Joe. That's
exactly. That's a Joe deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, super good. #4, don't refuse to do something just because you don't fully understand it. Give an example of that. There's a thing that a lot of funds and a lot of syndications put in, which is called a waterfall. What a waterfall basically means is that the higher and higher return that you can generate, the more money the general partnership, the GP, which if we want to get really technical real quick, putting together a big syndication means that there's a GP, general partnership, and a limited partnership or limited partners. Limited partners put in the money, the general partnership manages the deal. Typically, they're split anywhere from 80-20 up to 60-40, and I've seen everything in between, and even there's some extremes on both sides. So we typically do like a 70-30 split, but here's the thing. The higher and higher return we can get, we get a little bit more and more equity for the general partnership. Now, why would we do that? It's because it incentivizes us as a general partnership to go and crush not a 15% return, which is what we're typically projecting for investors. We want a 20, 25, 30%. Like we want to really just blow this out of the water because then we make a little bit more money. Yeah. So it's a win-win for everybody. But the thing is, I didn't understand it. I really didn't understand exactly how a waterfall worked, and it got complicated. So I just was like, I always won't do it. And then it was Brian Murray, who later we brought in as a partner. Brian Murray wrote Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate. Yeah, he's going to kill me for getting that wrong. Which actually I have right back here.
That's why you have me on these podcasts, because I can always show up with the name of that book.
This one right here, Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate, How a Small Investor Can Make It Big. So we brought Brian Murray in, and one of the reasons why is because before we brought him in, he was just drilling me on questions about the fund. And he asked, well, are you going to put in a waterfall? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, why not? And the more he drilled me on it, finally I had to admit, I just don't understand really good enough how it works. And he's like, well, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And so the real question is, how do I learn to understand it? So when you're getting into bigger deals, you're not going to understand a lot of stuff. So you can either choose just to sit it out, not do it, or always have that attitude of, I'm going to learn how to do it. I'm not going to let fear stop me.
Yeah, if I had refused to do things just because I didn't understand them, I never would have done anything. And I think that's true for a lot of people. So find something you want to do and then educate yourself on it. A lot of us tend to take the kind of like trial and error school of hard knocks, which sometimes is the only way to go, where you do it wrong and then you figure it out. But try to minimize that. Read books, listen to podcasts, get around people who are doing what you want to do, and learn to understand that thing that you're pursuing.
Yeah, huge. #5, hire for where you are going. And yes, you can hire. Now, here's what I mean by that. So when we defined the vivid vision, when I sat down and spelled that all out, what I wanted to do, I knew that I'm going to need a team. I couldn't do all that myself. And so I was like, well, I'm going to need an acquisitions person who's in charge of like, analyzing deals and talking with brokers. I'm going to need an investor relations person. I'm going to need an asset manager. We're going to need a property manager. I'm going to need a personal assistant. I'm going to need somebody to oversee that whole thing. So I actually defined each role ahead of time. This is something you can get from the book Traction, which was an excellent book. Also back here somewhere behind me. And Traction it talks about define these roles ahead of time. Even if you have to just put on different hats all day long in the beginning, that's fine. So hire for where you're going. I knew I would need these 5 people. So rather than saying, well, here's what I got right now, I said, this is what I need. Now, when you put together a big fund or syndication, there's typically things called acquisition fees and there's asset management fees or some fees involved that is meant to cover the overhead of the company. So we simply worked backwards. Okay, we need 5 people on staff. That's going to cost this much money. How much would that mean in terms of acquisition fees? What would that mean in terms of purchases? So we're going to buy $30 million of real estate every year minimum, and that will pay for everyone's salary. So that's how you can afford to hire, because you can put it into the deal itself, like by your fees. Now, granted, if you just want to take all that yourself and do all the work, I don't think I could. But I could have done a lot of the work of the 5 people, but I'd have to work 120 hours a week.
Yeah, you can only scale this a certain size with that.
Alone.
There does come a point when there's just not enough hours in the day and you need help.
Yeah. And the other way you can afford to hire is if you don't want to go that route or you really you don't want to pay anybody, who cares if you bring in a bunch of partners to do different, like I could have just, instead of like paying salaries, I could have simply just, like our first deal, like Ryan and I are partners on the deal. And so we could have just brought in people and given them chunks of equity instead of any money whatsoever. Find people on BiggerPockets, connect with them. Hey, they're awesome at asset management. Great. They get to be the asset manager. They're great at investor relations. Great. Put them there. And divvy up based on equity. So then there's no money out of pocket whatsoever, but you get a team of superheroes and you bring them together and it's like the Avengers, but less drama.
Yes.
Number 6, define your team member roles, responsibilities, and KPIs. As you grow, this kind of relates back to what we talked about with Traction a second ago, but we have individual roles for each and every person, but then furthermore, we have responsibilities. This is exactly what they're responsible for. And then we have KPIs. This is how we know you're doing your job. KPI is a key performance indicator? Yeah. So like, this is how we know you're doing your job because you did this. Like your goal is you're going to try to, take conversions from here to here. You're going to get this much money raised. So each person has KPIs that we monitor twice weekly, really. We have one like general meeting that we do and then one quick, what we call a WIG meeting, which we'll get to in a little bit.
Yeah, and these don't have to be super long, comprehensive goals. Like just you have to give each person like their simple metric, whatever their goal is, just to give them some sort of direction. And everybody that we've hired is a rock star in their individual role. So you say like, this is where you need to get with your metric, and they take it and run with it. And we're fortunate enough, like all of our guys are rock stars, but they're all pretty versatile too. So they have their main focus, which they're really good at, but nobody's afraid to dive in and help somebody else on what, what that other person's working on.
Yeah, huge. Number 7, track your lead measures. So this means there are lead measures and lag measures. If you listen to the BiggerPockets podcast, you've heard me talk about this before. A lead measure is something you do to get the lag measure result. So number of times you work out in a given week is a lead measure. Your weight on the scale is a lag measure. And so we track both, obviously, lag measures. How many deals have we closed? How many offers got accepted? Those are lag measures. But we also meticulously track lead measures. So, for example, Walker, who's our head underwriter, our acquisitions guy, he's a human calculator. He's awesome. Yes. Walker has a lead measure of putting in 25 LOIs, right? 24?
Something.
Yeah, 24, 25 LOIs in the quarter. What is an LOI? It's a letter of intent. It basically means an offer. Because we know if we offer enough, now there are, of course, we got to get leads that come in and we have lead measures for that. We have, a number of contacts to brokers and things like that. But that's just one example. We know that if we do that consistently, we're going to get the lag measure that we want, as long as we're continuing trying to improve our results from that.
Yeah. So it's as simple as if you consider that you're going to you want to buy one property a month, let's say, and to do that, 10% of your offers get accepted. You've got to make 10 offers a month to get one offer accepted. So just figure out where your goal is, back it up from there, and figure out what your lead measures are to get to that lag measure.
Yeah, it's been a really powerful thing. So a couple of things, for example, one of my lead measures is reaching out to investors who have previously invested in our fund, our first fund. So we have 2 funds now. So I reach out to investors who invested in the first fund and just say, hey, thanks for being part of the fund, and just building a relationship. And if I do that consistently, every week I'm reaching out to investors, building relationships, and I track it. Like I have a tracker that I track. I know that over time that's going to help me raise more and more money, but it's also going to help deepen relationships. I'm going to get further contacts in the industry. I'm going to make better friendships and like we're all going to grow together. So that's a lead measure I have. Ryan, your lead measure is
relationship building. So to reach out to other investors, ones that are actually doing bigger and better things than we are, and just introduce myself. I've never met these guys before. Form a relationship, stay in touch with them, and deals will follow, because we're finding deals that may not work for us, but we might be able to pass them off to somebody else, and likewise that could reciprocate where they could find something and pass it over to us. So it's just good to know who's out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Really, really fun stuff like that. Tracking your lead measures, stuff that you can control. Number 8, focus on your superpowers. You know, this is one of the, I guess, most like important things I feel like we've learned is like, there are things that I'm not good at. There are a lot of things I'm not good at, and I just don't get energy doing. And so what are the things I get energy doing? You're looking at it. Like, I love this stuff. I love teaching and being on a video and talking with investors about like strategy and what we're doing. That's fun. You know what doesn't sound fun to me? Is sitting in a spreadsheet for 4 hours trying to figure out the exact sale price. Now, I will review a spreadsheet when it's done. I will look it over, but I don't want to spend 4, 5, 8 hours analyzing a deal. But you know who loves doing that? Walker. Yeah, Walker loves doing that. He's a spreadsheet guy. He's a high, like on the disc profile, he's a high C. He loves that stuff. Focus on your superpowers. Do that. And then everything else, like let other people do the other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So like when we started, we were kind of doing all of that stuff. And now that we've hired for specific roles, all of the people we hired are doing their specific role better than you or I were doing at the time. Because we're both like pretty good at a lot of stuff, right? We're versatile, and that's kind of what we do. But when we hired people that did exactly what we needed them to do, it took the pressure off of us. And like now you can focus on your podcasts and your webinars and the things that you really like to do the best. And kind of my superpower is just facilitating and getting things done, or maybe working through a snag. So like Walker loves doing underwriting analysis, like chained to his desk, just plowing through spreadsheets. He loves that, right? So that's his superpower. I don't like it. I can do it. Not as well as him, but I can do it. But I would rather just facilitate him and everybody else on the team to make sure they have all the pieces they need to capitalize on their superpower.
Yeah, huge, awesome. Number 9, the deal raising. I should call this the money raising equation. Really, what I mean by that is the money raising equation. I think that was just a mistake. Anyway, money raising equation is this: you got to have the deal. Meaning you've got to have the actual property. If you don't have a good property, you're never going to raise money for it because it just doesn't pencil out. You've got to network a lot. Like you got to attend conferences, you got to do, webinars maybe, you got to go on other people's podcasts. Just get your name out there. And then third, you have to have the good pitch. You have to have, in other words, you have to have something you can show, whether it's a presentation or just in a conversation. What does your elevator pitch look like? There's a lot of people syndicating deals right now. What makes you stand out? What makes you better than others? So my pitch is very simple. I say, look, we may be facing a recession at some point in the next couple of years. We probably will. I think just by odds, like it could happen. So I had that same problem. I make a lot of money. I have a lot of income coming in. What do I do with my money? Well, I decided to buy mobile home parks because I believe when the economy crashes that rents are going to compress from the top down, and that the lower end of the market is going to be safer than the higher end of the market. And that makes a lot of sense. And so I believe mobile home parks are like the last bastion of life and hope for people before they go homeless. And they're likely not going to give that up. Plus they own their own home, and the cost of rent is so cheap in these parks that even if they did lose their job, they could still probably pay the couple $100s a month for lot rent to be able to survive. So I believe that mobile home parks are very recession resistant. And so I'm dumping my money. I'm actually investing alongside investors in the fund. So you see, now this is my pitch, right? This sounds like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. I call it a cash growth fund. Furthermore, that we are going to increase investor returns in spite of a recession. Not like, well, sorry guys, I didn't see a recession coming. No, if a recession comes, great, our returns are going to go up because we're infilling. Our returns are not based upon the economy improving, upon cap rates staying low forever. Instead, we're going to force appreciation through infill. So again, by pushing that pitch to people, when I talk to people through networking, and because we have solid deals that actually will return those returns, or we hope they will return those levels, now people want to put money in the fund. So we're able to raise, we're raising $10 million right now. I think we have verbal commitments up into that amount right now, or at least really close to it. And why? Because that resonates to people. And so again, you got to craft I don't mean being deceptive in any way, but you've got to find a way to talk about your deal. It doesn't just bore people or doesn't confuse people. So how can you simply put it? And I don't know how simple that was and off the cuff, but there you go.
That was great.
All right. Moving on. Number 10, harness somebody else's experience and bank account. Let's talk about Brian Murray again. Brian Murray, who wrote Crushing It in Commercial Real Estate. That's like a commercial for
Apartments
his
and
book. I said it wrong again. Crushing It in Apartment. Let's talk about Brian Murray for a minute. So Brian had done like thousands of units before coming to us, and before we built a friendship and a relationship. We actually we did a mastermind kind of meetup last year here in Maui, where we just brought out like 18 investors to learn and connect and grow. And we had an amazing time.
Fantastic.
It was so cool. Yeah. Brian was one of the guys that showed up, and we just built a really good relationship with him. Goes back to the networking thing. Yeah. So what we realized was that we were lacking a critical component in our business. That was asset management, which means once we buy the property, how do we make sure that it just continues to grow? Now, I could have, again, every day checked up on the property manager and done all the numbers and stuff. That was not my superpower. So we harnessed his experience in doing large multifamily, and we brought him in, and like we just don't know what we don't know. So especially in the beginning when you're trying to go big, is harness somebody else's experience and maybe their bank account. There's a thing when you try to get a loan on a large commercial property is you're supposed to have a net worth greater than the loan amount. Well, I didn't have that. I don't have that. But you know what? Who does? Brian and I combined. Even Brian on his own. I'm sure like you can bring in people as, what's the word? KPs? Key principals. Yeah, you can bring them in and utilize their bank account. In other words, their balance sheet to be able to justify getting a larger loan. So you alone might not be able to do it. You can bring in one of these KPs like we kind of did with Brian. And it works really well. And by the way, if you are looking for a KP, Brian would be. You can actually call Brian Murray. I'm sure you can find his information, and he can be a KP. If it's a good enough deal, and you network with him, he might be a KP for you. And there's a lot of guys out there that would do that because it's great for them, right? They don't have to do a lot of the work. Now, Brian does a ton of work in our business, but because he's more than just KP. But you can find these guys, and you can harness their experience and their thing to be able to get a loan in their bank account.
Yeah, he's brought a lot of credibility to our operation because all of our team members have specific experience in what they're doing. But what he brings, among many other things, is he has more experience than all of us combined at that level, at that size of deal, navigating some of the financing, which is very similar to the smaller stuff. But there's some details that he certainly brings clarity to. And with his experience, with the volume of deals he's done, the lenders appreciate that experience from him. They have a greater trust in our team overall, specifically because of his long-term experience at that level.
Yeah, definitely. So don't be afraid to bring in other people, even if it means giving up some of your equity. Number 11, going bigger might be better. This relates to what we kind of had about earlier, but we found that the larger we go, the loans actually tend to be easier. That's one of the reasons we shifted from 50 units up to 100, and we might even go more than that at some point, or at least dollar amount going bigger, because it's easier to get loans, it's easier to get financing, it's easier to do a lot of things. It's easier to get, the infrastructure can manage better on the larger deals. So don't think that a 20 unit is going to be a whole lot easier than a 50 unit. This goes back to the Darren Sagerg quote we said earlier, don't be afraid of commas.
Yeah, it's essentially the same amount of work regardless of the size of the deal. So for us, it just makes sense to go bigger.
Number 12. Hard is nothing but steps undefined or actions unrehearsed. You can put my name on the bottom of that one. That's my quote. So hard is nothing but steps undefined. In other words, a lot of people, like, you might think that buying an apartment complex is hard, but let's really break that down. Okay. You don't know how to buy an apartment. This goes back to the Bryce Stewart episode of the BiggerPockets podcast. You know, like, I don't know how to sell my truck, but I know how to vacuum my truck. Yeah. It's like, I don't know how to buy a 20 unit. I don't know how to buy a 100 unit apartment complex. Okay, that's fine. But do you know how to pick up the phone and go and call a broker? Maybe not. Do you know how to go to Google and type in commercial broker? Well, of course you do, right? So that's a step. Once you realize that's a step, okay, you did that step. So really nothing, I mean, any complex thing like buying in a huge apartment building is not actually hard. There are hard things in life. Like I mean, right? Cancer is hard. Like losing a family member is hard. Those things are hard. Running an ultra marathon is probably hard, but I've never done it, so I don't know. But most things, like business-wise, they're not hard. They're just steps you haven't defined yet and you haven't practiced them enough, and then they'd be easy. So you might think, oh, if you're a brand newbie, it was really hard to buy your first single family house. Like Ryan and I could buy a single family house with our eyes closed driving down the freeway. Like it would be like a simple thing because we've defined the steps and we've rehearsed it so many times.
Yeah. But how many times have all of us faced something, whether it's in real estate or otherwise, where it just seems so completely overwhelming?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. But then you do it. And you look back and say, well, that wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. Or maybe it was. Maybe it was brutal. You finally got through it and you're like, man, that was just terrible. But the next time you do it, it's 100 times easier.
Because now you know the steps. And now and you've done it before. Yes. And So don't let fear stop you from going bigger. Number 13, bigger deals means a higher chance of losing, like 40K. Like I've probably lost like 40K so far in terms of like my own cash that we've invested into deals that didn't work out and flying people out to areas. That sucks. So just going, I want to talk about risk for a second. There is greater risk in going bigger. And we've learned that like at this level, I mean, we do things now, like when we make an offer, we'll offer oftentimes like, a huge amount of earnest money with like unconditional. I mean, basically just like it goes hard on day one, which means if you accept our offer, we'll put $250,000 down hard day one. And if we don't close for whatever reason, we just lose that money. And that's a terrifying proposition. But at this level, that's what we need to do to be able to get some of these deals accepted.
Yeah, but with that said, if that were to happen, and it's as painful as it is, as an expensive a lesson as it is, like you're not going to lose your house. You're still going to be able to feed your family.
Yes.
Right? So you need to be careful.
And this goes to the bank. Yeah.
Yeah, we keep saying go bigger, but like
you may need to harm into somebody else's bank account. Let's go back to the bank account thing. Like, if
be aware of your personal risk when you're doing that.
Yeah, I make good income. I am a millionaire, so I know that I can handle these things if I had to. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, $40,000 was it sucks to lose that kind of money, but I just have faith and I know that I will make that back long term. Just like when you're trying to buy a single family home, you might lose $4,000 because you did an inspection and you paid some loan fees, and then the deal fell apart at the last minute, and you're like, oh, that sucks, and your whole net worth is $30,000 and you just lost 4 or 5 like that. It's the same thing. Like, it sucks, but know where you're at. And if you can't afford to lose the bigger amount, doesn't mean you can't do the bigger deals, but you may need to bring in somebody else and borrow from their bank account. Yep. So yeah, it just, keep your risk in mind. Number 14, go the extra steps to get your deals accepted. Like, I don't care if you're in mobile home parks, apartment complexes, self-storage, whatever. It is competitive right now. Like, we are, like, I'm actually surprised. Like, this is one thing that surprises me over the last couple of years of getting bigger is, like, I thought the competition would be a little bit less, but it's not. It's just as much, if not more, than buying the small deals. Yeah. So you have to find a way to make yourself stand out. Now you're not competing with, like, John homeowner who wants to just go buy the house to live in, like when you're on smaller deals. Like, now you're competing with really sophisticated, intelligent people who have been doing this longer than I have. And so how do we stand out? Well, we do stuff like we do that extra hustle to try to get our deals accepted. For example, like, we will get on a plane and go fly immediately, like in the middle of a trip. Like, you were in the middle of a trip and you just like
at the conference, and I blew off my return flight because there was a property that we were going to make an offer on. So I instead went to the airport, got a flight to that property that day, so I could show up on site. And when we presented our offer, we're like, our team's already been there, we've seen it. Here's the offer. Yeah, like, not everybody's going to do that.
No, and so a lot of people are just like, well, I'll just fire off a bunch of stuff. And if you're an experienced guy, maybe you can afford to do that. Yeah. We're young and scrappy. We're just trying to build this thing, and so we are going to go the extra mile. And number 15, find ways to get pulled to the next level rather than needing to push yourself there. And I'm going to relate this one more time back to Brian Murray. So when he came into our team and we brought him in as asset manager, he really started like pulling us to this whole nother level because he was already on that other level. And so that was a way that we got pulled to the next level and that we really like had to rise to the occasion. Another way you could do that is just by like go attend a lunch meeting with investors that are way further along than you are. That's going to pull you to that next level. Instead of you having to fight your way there, find ways to get pulled to that level where you naturally have to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we were afraid of commas, right? And
yeah,
so Brian was like, well, it's the same if you, like, don't be afraid, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, okay. And he's still, like, pulling and dragging us sometimes, but it's been all for the best for sure. Yeah, it's been really good. So find ways to get pulled to that next level. Now, a couple quick things I said earlier. I didn't want to talk about the beginning because I don't want this just to be a mobile home park conversation because honestly, I don't want everybody watching this to go buy mobile home parks because it just makes it compete with us. But real quickly, why we like them in case you're curious. We are into mobile home parks because I don't even think I have a slide necessarily for it. Yeah, I think there's the last slide. A couple things. One, I said I think they're recession resistant more than most asset classes. I like that the tenants own their own homes and they are going to pay their own water, sewer, and garbage. I like the fact that they're unlikely to leave. Like the time that a tenant stays in their home is a whole lot longer than an average rental because where an average apartment, they can just pick up and move. If they own their own home and they're in a park, they're probably there for 5 or 10, 15 years. And so that's a few of the reasons why we like mobile home parks, but probably the most important reason that I've learned, and I didn't know this going into it, but why I like them today is because it is the hardest asset class I've ever experienced. I think it's harder than self-storage. I think it's harder than apartment complexes. I think it's harder than small multifamily. It is incredibly difficult.
because there's just so many variables that we're learning. Like, you know, there's some tenant-owned homes, some park-owned homes. There's a self-storage on the property. You know, there's a bunch of tenants not paying. There's a bunch of rent-to-own things. There's like all these different scenarios that you have to try to figure out and work through. And so I feel like we spent a year just like learning how this works. It's hard.
With your typical apartment deal, and there are some complex ones, but you and I, anybody really can analyze an apartment deal in 5 minutes on the back of a napkin, essentially, and say, okay, this is what it's worth, because there aren't as many variables. Like there's one thing that you pretty much do with an apartment. You either rent it as is, or you're going to improve it, and maybe the timeline's a little different. But with a mobile home park, like you had just mentioned, there's tenant-owned homes, there's park-owned homes, there's vacant lots, and then so you have all those variables, and then there's like a dozen different ways to deal with each one of those variables. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to underwrite it? Very, very difficult to assess and underwrite, and it's taken us some time to get there, and we're still refining our process.
Every time.
We're pretty confident with it, especially if you look back what we were doing a year ago to where we are now, night and day. But we continue to tweak that underwriting every time we learn something new.
Yeah, it's been big. So, and again, like I said earlier, it's more important that you decide than what you decide. So I would encourage everybody, a couple of action steps from today's video. If you're watching this, you know, pick something. If you want to go bigger, great. Pick something and go bigger on it. I'd also encourage you to attend local conferences for that industry, or at least for a larger industry. I mean, a lot of this came out of us attending Joe Fairless's best ever conference last year. I went to that and I was like, man, surrounded by people who are doing 100-unit apartment complexes, 200-unit apartment complexes. My friend Ben Leibovich, who I think is actually watching this video right now, like Ben started buying big apartment complexes, and we started talking about it every day. And I'm like, man, I'm just surrounded by all these people doing these big things. So that kind of pulled me to that next level as well. So get around people that are doing those bigger deals. That'll help you get there.
Stay engaged.
Yeah, stay engaged. Yeah, and then again, it's like a never-ending learning process. Like you got to learn, and you're going to learn a ton. It's not easy to go big necessarily, but it's totally worth it. So if you like this video today, make sure you guys don't forget to give that little thumbs up button below the video. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, and you know, leave a comment below the video and ask questions if you want. We'll try to jump in and chat. If you have a mobile home park deal, or you want to help us find some, I actually have a website, bringbrandonaddeal.com. You can send it there. Follow us on Instagram at BeardyBrandon. Ryan Murdock.
Ryan.Murdock21.
Ryan.Murdock21. And of course, follow BiggerPockets everywhere that you can find us. Or I don't think we're on what's not Snapchat. What's the other one now? TikTok. I don't think we're on TikTok yet, but we probably should be. Follow us at BiggerPockets everywhere. If you're interested in real estate investing, whether it's buying a single family, buying a 5,000 unit thing, doesn't matter. Everything in between. BiggerPockets is your home for real estate investing online. So with that, let's get out of here. This is Brandon Turner and
Ryan Murdock
signing off.